Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. If it sounds like I haven't come down from Cloud 9 yet, that's because I haven't. I know it's a first-round win. I know we're a very good team, maybe even a great team, maybe even a really great team. We'll find out in the next couple weeks. And I know first-round wins are not supposed to be a big deal when you are a team of that ilk, but I apologize to no one for how I am feeling and how I've been feeling for the last 33 hours-ish. So I don't know. I've completely lost track of time. And I'm very happy also because I get to talk to my buddy about this win, which I have not done so yet. I did not have the brain space to even check our text thread yesterday, because yesterday was about putting one foot in front of the other and not falling over, because I was going on 2 hours of sleep all day whilst writing a 10 things review of the series that just happened. All this is to say I have not talked to Jeremy Cohen yet. So first I will say, hello, Jeremy. How are you?
Hello, John. I'm a lot better today than I was on Wednesday, which is a great feeling because Wednesday was not a very fun feeling. I knew they were going to win one of three. It's the confidence I have in this team. But if I said that I was nervous, then there's no reason I would say it, because then it would show that I'm nervous, but I definitely had some nerves for sure. But again, it goes back to the trust in this team, and the overarching feeling of when in doubt, they find that final gear that you knew they had, but didn't really know that they had within them. And sure enough, by golly, they did it. Gee whiz.
Gee Williker.
Gee Williker.
Was it like a 50s TV character used to say these things, or are they just like 50s sayings? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like Opie, Ron Howard, It's just
I never watched that. Did you ever watch that show?
No, because I didn't live in the 1950s, John. Of course I didn't.
We're on reruns, aren't they? All right, we're getting.
This is why you love all the players of the 50s and the 60s, because you saw them live.
Love me. Yeah, that's it. Love me. I actually was okay. So there's going to be a little trivia question in a bit, because I was looking back at the 40s and 50s actually earlier this morning while I was preparing for the pod. Don't ask. Well, you'll see why.
What bearing does that have against the Pacers?
We'll get there in a bit. I just want to say, I look, today's show is going to be a little bit about looking back, a little bit about looking forward. We're going to kind of bask in the afterglow. We're right in that nice in between zone right now, where we've come down, I think, off of the initial high, but at the same time, I am not yet turning the page to worrying about the next series to the extent that I will worry about the next series. You know what? I know we're hopping around. I don't know if you knew. I do this sometimes. I hop around. Before we look back on the Sixers, do you think you will be worried about the Indiana series? We don't have to talk about it for a long time, but just like yes or no.
Worried in general?
Yeah, for instance, going to the Sixers series, I was like, oh shit, if Joel Embiid looks like Joel Embiid, we could be in for a really, really tough time. Or like that, I was worried.
Well, you know what? Let's see the past, then we'll go to the future, because it's a great question that you're asking.
Okay, if it deserves a longer answer, then that's fine. We'll save it.
I think so. We don't want to spoil what we've got. That's where we're at.
I'm giddy. I'm giddy still, and that's why I want to stay giddy. And the reason I asked the question is because I don't know is like there going to be a point in time like getting to Sunday night, maybe Monday morning, where I'm like starting to get little off kilter. I don't think that I am. And I want this feeling to continue forever. So let's just talk about what we experienced. How about that? You say you were not nervous. Stay giddy.
That's
a good phrase. No, don't stay Josh Giddey. There was a point in time, a late second quarter of game 6. Because I like you, I figured they'll find a way. I was very nervous about like the prospect of going to game 7. I predicted we would go to a game 7 when we had our town hall the other night. And we got off to the start that we did in game 6. And then the run happened, Philly's run, and the run extended into the third quarter. It ended up being they were outscored by I think 32 points over the span of like less than 24 minutes of court time, maybe like 22, 23 minutes. It was quite a turnaround, but it was during the late second where for the first time I had the thought, and like the announcers, I think to some extent verbalized this a little bit, and people were definitely, saying it on social media and whatnot, that they had run out of gas. And I, like you, had unshakable confidence in this team's will and desire and like mental toughness and all of the things, all of the compliments, all the adjectives that we've used to describe them over the last, really, I mean, the whole season, but really since the end of January. And then I caught myself and I'm like, yeah, but does any of that matter if they're just like, if their legs are jelly and they have and they're just like, literally it's on empty and the reserves are done. And so for the first time, I think all series, I really got down to a place where I'm like, oh crap, they could make history here. They could become only the fourth team ever to lose a 3-1 lead after having with home court advantage. And they got to third quarter and like, they were like the lead increased, but at the same time, they started finding something. And then they just do what they do and they find a way. Did you ever get to that point? I guess is what I'll ask you.
Where I felt a game 7 was inevitable?
Or worse, where you were like, they're just not going to have enough in the tank to get across the finish line here and that they might lose the series.
So I'll walk you through my day and specifically the evening of the game. I went to the watch party that we had, and for whatever reason, call it minor trauma from the game before, I refused to let myself show emotion. The Knicks were up 33-11, and Andrew, who was there, could vouch for this. I was not excited. I was sitting in a chair, arms crossed, almost like a I'm never happy Tibbs type of vibe. The only times I really showed emotion were when Josh Hart hit a 3, because I just assume that Josh Hart isn't going to make it, and he's replaced Randall as the team's preeminent no yes shooter. So when Josh Hart hits 3s, I'm like, let's do it. But it's 33-11. I'm still not celebrating, and they start coming back and further, and I just feel worse, and it's a sinking feeling. And then it gets to halftime, and of course the lead is gone. And I'm thinking, like, this game is just, it's out of hand. You had a 22-point lead. You've blown it. Now you're down by 3. Like, the talk that's going to be there, the pressure, it was a lot. It's just insane. And then come back for the second half. And one of my friends joined, and then my girlfriend actually surprised me by coming as well to the event. And I recognize that as the Knicks, actually, from the point she got there until the end of the game, outscored the Sixers by 7. So thank you to her. But I just, even in the moments towards the end, when the Knicks built a cushier lead, was it 6 or 7 with about a minute to go? 8.
It got to 8. Yeah.
There are people like whooping and hollering, and I'm still there like, stop it.
Yeah. No.
Like, enough. That stop doing that. People were hugging. I was like, get off of each other. There was a couple that was kissing, and I screamed, stop kissing. No kissing. Like, I love, but not in this moment. Get out of here with that crap. And then it was only after Heald missed the 3 where it just, all of the emotions release, and it's just it's relief primarily, and you're huddling and you're hugging people and everyone's screaming, and I can't tell, did a tear form? Probably, right? Like, I don't remember them falling, but I could feel them forming, because it was just all of that emotion that came out, and it's still the euphoria. Like, this goes back to that storytelling, that first round victory feels so good. And it was never going to be easy. But from the outside, it'd be like, all right, you want a first round, but hey, only 8 teams can do it in the playoffs. They can win a first round series. So the idea of not having to deal with the stress of a game 7 today, on top of all of that, having to contemplate, I knew I wasn't going to sleep afterwards, and coincidentally I had to do work after the show, after the game. So it was like, I'm either going to not sleep because I'm really excited, or I'm not going to sleep because I'm just despondent. And I'm really glad it was the former because of how stressful the series was. But, hats off to Tyrese Maxey. I somehow don't respect anyone else on the Sixers. I respect them less than I did before.
Batum?
Oh no, I don't respect him at all.
No, he did knock Bogey, not intentionally, but he did knock Bogey out for the playoffs. So I don't love that.
He did. He also the little ticky-tack fouls and the ones that didn't even get called that he had on Brunson, like the one where all these Sixers fans are complaining about how Brunson jerked his way up, when the video clearly shows Batum grabbing onto his jersey and forcing him backwards, and then Batum moving back to draw contact.
You're right.
To sell the foul.
Dirty player.
It's more just he gets under. I'm sure he's the type of player where if you had him on your team, you'd like him, but he's not on the Knicks. So, I'm glad that Embiid had miserable fourth quarters. He's never made it to the second round. Before going into the series, especially when he was hurt, it was like, oh, what if he was hurt, or what if it wasn't hurt? What if Joel Embiid had more supporting cast? What if he did this? And the whole time, I think like, dude has been one of the best players the last 4 years. Hope no one's driving a cab right now, because what if we shut the fuck up and just acknowledge the fact that he has never been that guy? It's yet to happen. And maybe it does. Maybe with all their cap space, they go out and they get Paul George or some other star and they do great. But until then, this was not what they entailed when the season started. So feels even better.
So I want to just say that your overarching. So it sounds like first of all, you were able to stay in the moment. Your mind did not during the game gravitate towards a potential game 7.
No, it did. I'm saying
it did. Okay.
It absolutely did. That's why when my girlfriend showed up, she happened to be nearby and surprised me. And I was like texting her as the lead is dwindling. I'm saying, I wrote, it's over for the game. Like, I believed that the Knicks would win the series. I lost confidence that they would win the game. And then when they tied it in the fourth, leading into the fourth quarter, I believe it was 83 all. That's where I thought, okay, you know what? Things have been going better since she arrived. I feel good. You just have to win one quarter. And then I think it was 95 all or something when it was around 6.5 minutes left. And I thought, just win those 6.5 or so minutes. And
you nailed it. It was in stages.
Yes.
It was in stages because it was like, even at I was like you at halftime. I was like, oh, they're not winning this game. Like it was a 3-point lead or 4-point lead, whatever it was. But I was like, they're not winning this game. Like all the momentum is in the other way, and like they're gonna have to do it at home. They're gonna have to figure out a way to do it at home. And then, like you said, it got to notes are a mess here. It got to 83-83 was the score after 3 quarters. That was after the OG Anunoby 3-pointer to end the third, which I mean, I had forgotten until I looked back. Not only did OG hit a 3 to end the third, he hit a 3 to open the scoring in the fourth, which put them up. That second 3, the first the 3 to open the scoring in the fourth quarter, I thought that was big for them to take a fourth quarter lead. I thought that was like really big in the moment. And then to your point, they actually were up 95-93 on the deuce 3, but then Embiid came back with 2, and then it was 95-95. And it was like, that was like stage 2. It's like, all right, we're at, and Brunson was coming back in. There was 6 minutes and 38 seconds left in the game. And it's like, all right, win these next 6.5 minutes and you're done. Like, that's it. And then the final stage for me, at least, and we were talking about it because I think there was a timeout or a review or something or whatever it was when they went up 8 and it was 2 and change left, I think. And that was the OG dunk, but then he missed the free throw. And I was just trying to figure out, I'm like, all right, how many do they need? Do they need 3 more great defensive possessions and 2 makes? Do they need 3 makes and 2 more great defensive possessions? And then, of course, Benji jumps in. He's like, they also have to get their defensive rebounds. And sure enough, they did not get their defensive rebounds, which is how they ended up going up 8 to tied. But it's like that was a game felt in stages. And I think that's what made it such a crazy game. And you could even extend that analogy out to the series, and like, man, like you brought up the Embiid part of it. I feel like the series had so many storylines. I guess Embiid, I don't know let's take our Knicks hats off for 1 second. Because I've listened to like the Hoop Collective podcast on the series. I listened to the Low Post with a friend of the pod, Howard Beck. What do you think the overarching story from the series should be? Do you think it should be? Doesn't it? It could be, to me, it could be one of 4 things. The Knicks as a team overcoming adversity, Brunson as a player, Embiid as I'll use Zach Lowe's term, like a tragic figure, or Maxi's emergence. Like those are the 4 things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like what if 10, 20, 30 years from now, what we'll remember the series as. Do you think we'll remember it mostly for Brunson?
When it comes to history, victors are the ones who are typically writing it. So it should be.
That's a great line.
It should be the ones who are. The history is written by the victors. It's just the way it is. That's where I see it. This will be more meaningful because the thing is, when you consider the Sixers, this probably isn't one of their most disappointing playoff series in the Embiid era, or it's not the most. I should say it's right. Like they've gone through enough trauma that I don't think this necessarily gets to the top. So I think we're going to remember this more from the Knicks' vantage point, because the Knicks are on the rise, and that's not to say that the Sixers era is over. Certainly not.
Certainly not.
They have ample opportunity to try to make these upgrades for the around Maxey and around Embiid. But I think that it should naturally be remembered as the game where Brunson did things that haven't been done since Michael Jordan and Jerry West in terms of his scoring volume. And that's what it should be remembered for. We can talk about Embiid. There will be talks about, well, Embiid was hurt and Maxey was sick, and they would have done this if not for the officiating and all these things. But those details are going to be lost as time goes on. We're not going to remember this series as, hey, remember the time the referees were, as Nick Nurse would probably say, to paraphrase, consistently inconsistent. It's not going to be that sort of thing that is going to register for us in history. It's going to be, this was a hard fought series that could have gone either way, but the better team won. And we could sit here and say, well, the Sixers are the better team. And I would look at a myriad of stats and factors. But at the end of the day, John, the ads that we do, you talk a lot about the number 4, specifically with foreplay. Well, I can count 4, and that's 4 wins by the Knicks in this series against the Philadelphia 76ers. And that's all that really matters to me.
It is all that really matters. I'm so happy you brought up foreplay. Shout out to our friends at Foreplay. I'm also happy that you said the number 4, because it did take 4 wins. And the other thing I've been thinking about the last few days, last day and change, is like, not like, should I feel bad about feeling so happy over a first round win? Because I don't. And I think that's in large part because, as everybody who watched this series and who covered this series acknowledged, this is not a usual caliber of first round matchup in terms of the quality of the teams, and like if Joel Embiid was a shell of himself, that'd be one thing. Joel Embiid was not. I understand he was laboring. I understand it was difficult for him. The dude averaged 34 points or 33 whatever points and put up 50 in a game. And like, the things that got him are the same things that have been getting him his whole playoff career, which is falling short in the fourth quarter. Like, am I putting that to injury or am I chalking that up due to injury? I'm not. And back to the number 4, you didn't have to win 4 games to get out of the first round. And I was thinking back to like the 90s, and I understand this is before you were born, and like, or when you were like, what year were you born?
95.
Okay, so it was right around when you were born. Like I'm looking at 5 consecutive years. 93 beat the Pacers in 4 games, first round. 94 Nets, 4 games, first round. 95 Cavs, 4 games, first round, and then first round 3-game sweep with the Cavs, 3-game sweep with the Hornets. Like I remember those occurrences, and I remember them. I remember what the first round used to feel like if you were a Knicks fan, and it was like, oh, who are we playing in the second round? Like, how long is this going to take? Are we going to lose the game, or is this actually going to, And then it started to flip a little bit with some of the consecutive first round series with the Heat, which were bloodbaths. One with the Jeff Van Gundy hanging off the leg like a rag doll, and then obviously the next one with the 1-8 upset. Those were a different animal. But before that, first round series used to have a very different feel. And now, like, I look at the league, and I don't want to get too far off track, but like you look around the league this year, other than the 2 1-8 matchups, right? Heat Celtics and Pelicans Thunder, like all these other series carried an immense deal of intrigue with people picking either like different people picking both sides to win. Like there were people who picked the Sixers, there were people who picked the Knicks. Same thing for all the other series. Even a series like Suns Wolves, which ended up being a sweep, there were people who picked the Suns in that series, and I think I may have picked the Suns to win that series. Like good job by me. And we obviously have one series that's still going on as we are recording this that'll end tomorrow. So like I think I don't know exactly where I was going with this, just to make the point, like the feeling that we all have right now of a really special achievement, like I think it's very warranted. And what the Knicks managed to accomplish in the series, and what I keep going back to, and I'm curious if you have dwelled on this at all, is I'm looking at the leading scorers in the playoffs for this year so far. And obviously the guy who's number 1 is plays for our team. Thankfully, very happy about that. But the guy who is number 2 on that list and the guy who is number 5 on that list, they both played for the team that we just beat. And I keep going back to that. And I'm like, man, and we beat this team, with those 2 guys doing what they did. And that just feels, I don't know, man. It makes it feel really, really, really earned. And I know we always talk up how it's about the team, right? We sound like tips. It's about the team. What can the team do? How good is the team? Not how good is your best player or second best player. And still I look at that and I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm overtaken.
Can't do it alone.
No.
I mean, it was never going to be Jalen Brunson doing it alone, because he was doing Jalen Brunson things. And yet it was never just going to be him. He needed those contributions. And that's exactly what the Knicks got from their other players. One of my favorite things to come out of this series is from now on, when we talk about that big Josh Hart 3, it's going to be which one? Because usually like what's synonymous in my mind with Josh Hart 3 was Cleveland game 1. And there are other large moments that featured that as well, but just he did it twice in this series.
Cleveland game 1 for sure, and obviously game 6. Mm-hmm. Like his 3, he had a few threes obviously in the fourth quarter of game 1, including one with a minute left.
That's what I'm saying. They're multiple just in this series alone.
And then on top of that, are they in game 2 at halftime if he doesn't go nuts from behind the 3-point arc in the first half there? So like, yeah, somebody, Dexter Henry, our friend at SNY and the New York Post, asked me, I was on with him for a few minutes yesterday, and he's like, asked me, do you think Josh Hart is like the real MVP of the series? And, it's like one of those questions where we're like, well, no, Jalen Brunson's the MVP of the series. No, but at the same time, that Josh Hart. So then, you know what? Maybe I should have offered a 5th option in that list before. Will we remember this as the Josh Hart series? And I hope not, because that would imply that his impact will dwindle, like moving forward, not only in this playoffs, but maybe, years beyond, because I expect him to be here for a long time. I don't know, but the guy, he definitely embodies the spirit of the team. I think we could agree on that. And it was cool to see him have those moments for sure.
Again, going back to the comment about how this should be a series that people remember the Knicks 4 and the rise of Jalen Brunson. I do still believe that can be the case, but the shortcomings of Joel Embiid are going to stand out quite a bit. I do think Game 3 is going to be remembered for a while, because that was the game
for his 50.
For his 50, and it's going to be, yes, he scored 50 points, except it's always going to have a caveat of but, right? He scored 50 points. How many of those were on free throws? He was a serial killer against the Knicks. How many murders did he commit against this team where he pulls Mitchell Robinson down? He's like, oh, I can keep doing this? Great. I'm going to, and I'm going to do worse. And just all of that. So, what typically happens, it's just human nature, but also discourse on social media enhances it, is we root for people to fail. We as a society. And Joel Embiid, outside of Philly, is not super well liked compared to, say, your average NBA superstar. And I think not seeing him succeed is going to be a huge thing to remember. And again, what I think this series doesn't get lost as much if the Knicks take care of business in the next round and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, because that's when we really start to say that's something the Knicks haven't done since 2000. Being able to beat the Sixers with Embiid, with Maxey, to be able to beat the Pacers in round 2, to have Jalen Brunson, the guy who was so instrumental to helping the Mavericks get to the Western Conference Finals. Like it solidifies your standing. And Jalen Brunson, who in my mind, top 5 MVP finisher, all NBA first team. That's how I view him based on the season he's had. There are still doubters, and seeing him leading the NBA in scoring after one round and getting to the point where hopefully the Knicks are past the Indiana Pacers and playing whichever team, presumably the favorites being the Boston Celtics. That builds the case. That helps you remember everything that we've seen thus far. So yeah, I mean, obviously he's been the best player in this series, and I run out of words to say about him. He's that good.
It's a little. So a couple things on the Embiid front. It's funny because the guy was his teammate. He does seem to be taking a little bit of the James Harden career path as far as narrative, specifically narrative, where James Harden, like when he was with the Thunder, when he first got to the Rockets, he was like a super popular player. Like people like James Harden. And then the longer James Harden stuck around, playoff failure after playoff failure, people getting sick of the way he played and how he went about his business. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, like everybody hates James Harden. And Embiid doesn't look like, I mean, based on the early reading of the tea leaves, like he's not going to ask out of Philly this year. Like, and why would he? He gets to play with Tyrese Maxey. It may be, and he's extension eligible, and see what happens with that this summer. Like, there's a point in time that may be coming pretty quickly, given all the injuries and stuff, where like all of a sudden, Joel Embiid has like I don't want to say like the Sixers are going to be stuck with him. Like the guy when he's healthy, he's still arguably the best player in the sport, for 3/4 at least. But he's at an interesting career place, and it's going to be interesting to track Embiid over the next few years. As far as Brunson, it's just weird it's hard to wrap my mind around what is actively happening, because we are witnessing. I don't know what the appropriate astrological analogy is, but like I was going to say a comet like going into orbit or something. We're witnessing, like, it is happening. We are in the midst of the thing happening, and that's always wild to try to like describe or wrap your mind around. And I guess it's just like where does it go from here? Like he's averaging 30. What is he averaging right now? 35. It's funny. He's averaging 35.5 points a game in the playoffs and 9 assists. What are we doing here? He's averaging 35.5 points and 9 assists in the playoffs. Is it going to stay at that? Like, does it need to stay at that for them to continue to win? I who the hell knows? So I'm like you. I don't know what else to say about Brunson. And then what happens next? And this will transition to our conversation. And before I do that, I want to give a plug to someone that we have an association, obviously, with one of the people who was on, Caitlin Cooper, who has a fantastic Patreon, Basketball She Wrote, had Benji on yesterday, in addition to someone who used to cover does cover
Sam Folk is his name. Sam Folk. That pod will be on our feed tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, it will?
Yes.
Oh.
Which is why before you plug it to say go there, they can just hang out.
Okay. Look,
I was waiting for that.
I was waiting for it too, and I was like,
it's in the group text where it's like, hey,
literally what I said. Caitlin and Benji is happening.
I didn't check any of my texts yesterday. Apologies. I was a zombie. Good. So when you hear that pod, you're going to hear an in-depth analysis, like crazy. So that's the first thing I want to say. As far as the series goes, from more of like a narrative perspective, do they need to win this series?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. The reason that I feel they do, and again, this is coming from someone who, when asked a few weeks ago, which team would you want to play the most? My feeling was, bring me the Pacers. And it wasn't because I view the Pacers as a bad team. They're a deeper team. They have a high octane offense. There's a lot that they can do. It's more that you got through the toughest opponent that probably any team had to face in the first round. If you flipped them, right? If you had, let's say you beat the Pacers first and then you lost to the Sixers, then it's like, well, there's no shame in losing to a team that's got Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And you just had a hard fought series, presumably against Indiana. That's a sort of thing. Yeah. But now it's the other way around, where the team that it's still good and deserves to be there, but if you had to probably poll consensus, would say that the Knicks are certainly the better team there. You're the 2 seed. You have right, like it's a 2v6. And again, those numbers might not mean anything in terms of the seeding having an impact, but they still do in terms of thoughts. Like, this is a chance for the Knicks to solidify themselves as this was not a fluke. The Pacers also found a way. There are a lot of narratives that will go into this series. One of my favorites being that whether they play or not, a Toppin brother is going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that's a pretty fun one. But the Pacers,
great narrative,
right? That's the only one. I want to see more human interest piece on the Toppin family about that. But the thing is, the Pacers made it to the finals of the in-season tournament. And now we don't have to care about the in-season tournament. If you feel it's a manufactured tournament, it is. But there are legacies on that front too. It's looking at Tyrese Halliburton leading the team to the in-season tournament, leading them to the Eastern Conference Finals. Narratives and careers are built on success in big moments. Look no further than what's happening with Anthony Edwards right now. Wow. Tyrese Maxey and his team lost in round one. The cases that are being built, and this is the chance for Brunson in the largest market in this league, potentially in all of sports, to say, I'm a superstar and I'm doing it here. And I just want everyone to realize this, because it's not a fluke that we're here. And looking at this as a hard fought team. So it is, to me, a must win series, because we look at last year and their thoughts of, well, the Knicks were this close to getting past Miami. And this was a Miami team that just caught fire from three, and the shooting crushed the Knicks, and they found help when they needed it, where they needed it. And I know, looking back at that series, it's 6 games, right? So there are a handful of moments that could have done it, but the forefront is always, for me, the Deuce McBride minutes in Game 6 in the second quarter. And again, it was a whole series, right? I'm not being fair by saying it's just him, and it wasn't just him. It was Tibbs. And sidebar, shout out to the Knicks from learning from the mistakes of Game 5 when it came with fouling up 3. You knew that they were not going to blow it the second time. The substitutions that Tibbs had, Deuce being able to be in the moment to foul, they were locked in. I was nervous, like I said, but I just felt they're not going to blow it a second time, because you learn from your mistakes. That's what the Knicks do. But with this series against the Pacers, and the series against the Heat last year, I felt that was a winnable series, even when the Knicks were down as much as they were. When they were down 3-1, I still felt just win that second one. And they had a great game 5. And the game 6 was so close.
Yep.
And granted, did they have Randall? Yes. Was he unhealthy for some of it? Yeah, but he also showed up for when he needed to for certain moments. And I just look at this Pacers team compared to that Heat team, and it just takes 7 at most great games in order to obliterate this. But I look at this team and I say, this team's better than last year's team from the Knicks perspective. And I don't see the Pacers as being a better team than that Heat team. And I don't see them playing in the same way the Heat play from how they draw contact. I think I'm going to walk away from this series being the Pacers team's really annoying, and TJ McConnell gets under my skin way more than I ever thought. And he always did that. He was always a thorn in the side of this team. But I just feel a long-winded way of answering this, John, that this is a series they should be winning.
So let me start by saying the Knicks are minus 300 to win the series. So it's essentially 3-1 odds or 1-3 odds, I guess, right? That they will win. Pacers are plus 235. I told Dexter Henry, he put me on the spot yesterday, and he's like, you make a pick. And I was like, Knicks in 6 without really thinking too much in it. That's plus 460 if that is of interest to anyone out there. I think it can be simplified even further. Looking back on Knicks Heat last year, now the Knicks are in the spot that the Heat were, and the Pacers are in the spot that the Knicks were. That Knicks team last year, I understand that they had been part of the core had been together for, several years, 3 years, I guess. I understand that they had it was not their first time in the playoffs. Like the Hawks series happened 2 years prior. That was that group's first run together, right? And that was Jalen Brunson's first playoff experience as a full stop starting point guard, all-star point guard on his own team. And they were also banged up, but I think the reason that series bothered so many people is you could not completely shake the feeling, and I think you kind of just implied this. They lost that series. It felt like they lost that series as much as the Heat won it. Now, I want to spin that forward to this year. If I was a Pacers fan right now, I'd be like, well, wait a minute, hold on. Why are we such heavy underdogs to a team that essentially has 5 playable perimeter players aside from their 2 centers, or 3 centers if you want to throw Precious in there too? And I'd be like, well, wait a minute, let's run them out of the gym. And that gets into the X's and O's, which I think is going to be interesting. And again, everybody should look forward to the pod that is going to appear on this feed tomorrow. If you think the Knicks are going to do well in this series, obviously a large part of that is your faith in Jalen Brunson being the guy who's going to be the best player on the floor. Obviously, it's a faith in the individual supporting cast members. I feel bad calling guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart supporting cast members because OG Anunoby, they're better than that. These guys are elite NBA role players, and if you want to put OG Anunoby in a different category, that's fine. But I think more than anything, you have to bank on their collective experience. I feel bad, I keep using the same words, but toughness, mental fortitude, all that stuff. Whereas you looked at the Pacers in the last round versus the Bucks, you could argue that the Pacers, the 2 games that they lost in that series, it wasn't the Bucks beating the Pacers, it was the Pacers beating the Pacers. They were not prepared to play game 1, and then they were not at all prepared to play the game that I think game 5, and then really they kind of should have lost game 4. That was the game that went into overtime, and they were playing with their food there too. So you could very easily argue that should have been a 7-game series. It wasn't. They won in 6. Credit to them, but I think to some extent you have to figure the team that this is their first run through. Think about it this way, and again, this going back to last year. It's hard to make your first run as a core, right, in the playoffs and get all the way to the conference finals. How often doesn't happen very often? In throughout NBA history, it's rare. We always talk about those 90s Knicks teams. They had to take it step by step by step by step. They didn't just jump all the way to the precipice of the finish line. When they started getting into the playoffs.
I'd say there's one team that comes to mind that just jumps out of nowhere.
Which one?
The Atlanta Hawks. And if anything,
the 60 win Hawks, or no, the Trae Young Hawks,
the Trae Young 2021 Hawks. And I think if anything, we've seen that was just the flukiest of runs, and like to the point of these teams have to be forged in iron. You need to take your lumps and you get better from it. You learn and you grow. And I think it's a great comparison that the Knicks are last year's Heat in terms of the experience factor that just simply wasn't there for the Knicks and is now prominent. And it also helps when having Dante DiVincenzo, which is a huge factor between this year and last year, not just from the shooting perspective, but you have players who know how to play together, and you know exactly, there's a mind meld. You can get exactly what you need out of them because you know the right buttons to push. If you're Jalen Brunson, if you're Josh Hart, if you're Dante DiVincenzo, and that continuity and the fact that they've built so many years of winning together, having that translate, it gives them kind of the extra oomph to get through this series, which is why I feel good about it. And it's not even an underrating Indiana feeling. It's just, this is a great Knicks team. I know you mentioned it, one of your favorite Knick teams that you've ever seen. It's hard not to love them when they've lost so many impactful players. And, I don't see Bojan Bogdanovic. I think I may have talked about this in the last one. Not going to be a difference maker, but it's a live body that you trust in certain minutes that gives you relief. And the gravity that he has certainly provides more shooting, which the Knicks were 16th out of 16 playoff teams, I believe, unless they're counting the play-in teams, which I don't believe Clean the Glass is, in corner threes.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. That's a great stat. Thank you for that.
And the Pacers this season from the Siakam trade had the best defense on corner threes.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough series. I think it's going to be tough to win these games. Like, the Pacers come at you. Their offense is elite. I think it would be a very different series if Tyrese Halliburton was Tyrese Halliburton. And then I think it would be, because the Knicks are so shorthanded, then would it be a toss-up if Tyrese was like full Tyrese? Maybe something close to it. I'd still probably pick the Knicks. And then just to your point about like where these two teams are, I'm thinking of a popular movie by our fellow Knicks fan Ben Stiller. If you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. Phil, it's not apples to apples because like I give this Pacers team more respect than this, but like the Sixers kind of felt like the wrench, right? Like, and the Knicks figured out a way to dodge the wrench, and now this is going to be at least something that like, the Maxey Embiid 2-man game, like there isn't really a way to guard that. Like if those guys are going, the Pacers don't quite have anything to that level where it's like, oh God, there's nothing that we could do to stop this. We kind of just we're going to do what we could do, and we got to hope for the best. Like I think they'll be able to figure out ways to counteract this Pacers team. Let's finish up
real quick. The reason I mentioned the corner threes, the main point being, look at how bad the Knicks were at corner threes and how well the Pacers defend them. And the Knicks still didn't need that in order to beat the Sixers. To the point of, and it can change, but the Knicks can beat you in so many different ways. And if they get hot from three, then it's going to be very difficult to beat this team because of how they're designed. But they can still win even when they're putrid from beyond the line.
I think they did a great. Let me say this: their threes were timely in the first round. Their threes were extremely timely, and that's to their credit. So just to set the full scene, Knicks have a chance to make it to the conference finals, as you said, for the first time since 2000. I will say throughout NBA history or Knicks history, these conference finals appearances do tend to come in waves. It was a few years before I was born, but back in the late 40s, early 50s, they made it to the conference finals, or the equivalent of the conference finals, 5 straight years. Then they didn't make it for like 2 straight decades. Then they made it for 6 straight years. That was obviously during the championship era. Then they didn't make it at all again for another couple of decades in a row. And then in the 90s, they made it 4 times in a 9-year span, and they have not 4 times in an 8-year span. They have not been back since. We end today with a trivia question. Do you know now with yet another series against the Pacers, where Knicks Pacers ranks all time, or when the series starts, where it will rank all time in terms of Knicks' most frequent playoff opponents?
Is it second?
You're close. Okay. It's third. So I'll give you the quick. So Boston is still far and away in front. They have played the Boston Celtics 14 times in the playoffs throughout their history. Nothing is close. I could actually, you know what? Technically, if you want to be right, you could be right. And here's why. If you're only counting the NBA, the Pacers are now in second this will be the 8th matchup between the Knicks and Pacers. Some of those are more memorable than others. They had a first round series back in the 92-93 season. It was a 4-game series, doesn't get a lot of attention. They also played a 5-game series in the East semis in 97-98. That one kind of gets forgotten about. But yeah, this will be the 8th time. The Bullets franchise, so 7 playoff matchups in the NBA, but there were also 2 additional ones between the Knicks and Bullets back when it was the Basketball Association of America. That was the 2nd and 3rd year of professional basketball. So I put it down as 9. If you want to drop it down to 7, that's fine. And then this series with the Pacers breaks a tie with the Bulls. The Bulls and the Knicks have also faced off 7 times. So now this pushes the Bulls down to 4th, and then the Heat are 5th with 6 matchups between those 2 teams. So look, this is you could say this is a historic rivalry. This will now be, I guess, the 3rd iteration of it, right? Because the Hibbert Melo series. I'm excited. I don't want to really think about it too deeply yet. I want to keep living on this euphoric high that I'm on, that we're all on. But I'm excited, man. Let's get it going, right?
Indeed. Yeah. A lot of other great storylines too. Hallie versus Wally.
Oh.
You've got OG versus Siakam. Which former Raptor is going to make the Eastern Conference Finals? The Toppin brothers as well. Tibbs and Carlisle is going to be a good one too.
Carlisle Brunson.
Yep. Carlisle benched him, I believe, in Game 7. That was the last game that Carlisle coached for the Mavericks.
Absolutely. That's a great call. Yeah.
It'll be, and also Josh Hart versus the city of Indianapolis. That's another one. Calling them a bottom of the barrel NBA city. So,
can I throw one more in there?
Please do.
This is a quirky one that will only matter to me. If you look at non-all-stars in the league, this series features 2 of the handful of the longest tenured with their same team, non-all-stars in the league. So Miles Turner is tied with Kevon Looney, first on that list. They've both been with their teams for 9 seasons. Then you have Jamal Murray, 8 seasons, but I put him aside because he should be an all-star. Maxi Kleber is and Jonathan Isaac are 7, although Jonathan Isaac missed 2 full seasons, so I kind of don't count him. And then 6 full seasons with their current team. Mitchell Robinson is one of 3 players, along with Anthony Simons and Duncan Robinson. Again, those are just non-all-stars. So it's kind of cool that the 2 longtime centers for their franchise, Turner more involved in trade rumors over the years than others, or than Mitchell Robinson. But like both of these guys have been around for a long time, and now they're going to face off, and it's going to be pretty cool. All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
Need my prediction? Because I don't think I'm.
Oh shit! Yeah,
are we doing it?
Yeah, do it. I'll go Knicks in 6.
Okay, I also am going Knicks in 6 once again. My biggest concern is the Miles Turner popping off from 3 game, and hopefully, if it happens once, it happens in the Knicks loss, and then in a Knicks win, I should say.
Yeah.
But it's going to come down to. The Knicks don't change their game plan with Turner. And this is a key thing. I think a lot of folks are going to look at this and just say, if he's hitting from 3, switch it up. I don't see them straying too far away from that because the odds say like he's going to miss eventually. And if he does, you don't want to switch it up too much because then it exposes you in other ways. Great pick and roll team. I expect OG on Siakam for a lot of minutes. OG on Turner. It'll be a really fun one, but I've got Knicks in 6. If it were first round, maybe I'd think differently and think it'd be fewer than that. But the Knicks are smaller in terms of their rotation size. Tired, even if they play the same number of games, same amount. So,
we'll. I'm going to save my more extended thoughts for the series when I think I'm on with Fred tomorrow. So that pod's coming your way too. We got a lot of content coming your way. What's that?
Matthew. Did you see?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I like that they started it with fucking Fred and then
fucking Fred. Matthew.
All right, we're gonna get out of here. I gotta take some couple of kids to gymnastics. Jeremy, this was great. And I'm looking forward to continuing to get to talk about this basketball team, man. Was not ready for the season to end. Not even close.
Me neither. Oh, yeah. We have a watch party for game 1. Thank you,
Watch
Andrew.
Party game 1. Come to T Squared Social. T Squared Social, 42nd Street, right down the block from Grand Central Station. We have now had 3 consecutive watch party wins, right? Is that accurate?
4 if you include the Nets game in the regular season.
So let's keep the streak going. Game 1. Again, not to put too much pressure on them, but Knicks have not won a playoff series in their history where they lost a game 1 at home. So, and game 1 historically is a big predictor of how things usually go in playoff series. Actually didn't go back and check.
Wasn't 2013 game 1 an Indiana win?
Yes.
Game 2?
Yeah, game 1.
I remember I watched that Midtown bar, and it was just that was not fun. I didn't enjoy that game at all. Game 1s matter a lot. So come out, support the cause. Again, T Squared Social, 42nd Street. Be there or be square for a game 1. What will hopefully be a win. And we will. That's it, I think. Right? Andrew, anything else?
Jeremy, go ahead.
I was going to say, the one thing I want is for the Knicks to have a series ceiling block and give Indiana fans the same amount of trauma that Roy Hibbert gave so many of us. So that's just what I'm rooting for at the end of the day. Knicks in 6.
That would be lovely. All right, Andrew, anything from you?
Also rooting for that. Ton of content coming your way, as John mentioned several times. Caitlin Cooper, Benji Ritholtz, Sam Folk. That audio will be on our feed. I think the video will also be on this channel sometime tomorrow. We've got John and Fred. Benji's going on with Dexter Henry. We've got so much content coming your way over the next couple of days to preview the series against the Indiana Pacers. Farewell, Philly. Enjoy yet another playoff disappointment.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Peace out.